This year, we're hoping to install a new playground in Lower Onondaga.
Thank you.
We just got the design today, so they are slated for July, August, as soon as we can get the PO into them.
Please call me for the grand opening.
Okay, so we have Lower Onondaga. Actually, Glenn, if you can just highlight a few of them that you know you have already scheduled for this year specifically. We're working on we are hoping to have a building in Homer Wheaton this year. Baseball equipment has been ordered for Intercity. A playground in McKinley. Grant Field that construction should take place this year. We have Magnorelli McChesney being worked on. We have a pre-construction meeting tomorrow taking place. We have Cecil Center receiving some upgrades. We just received all the final numbers on that one. Schiller Park, we have we're just waiting on some fitness equipment that will be installed this year. Anything else you'd like to add?
We're very excited about the amphitheater at Thornton Park.
I don't know if any work will actually be done this year, but we're working on the exact scope of that project right now.
Could I ask you a question to Glenn? Is there anything going on? Remember the lakefront stuff, and there was all that talk about possibly right by the water? Remember that non-motorized boat thing and possibly a dog thing? I mean, it seemed like it was all very preliminary when we talked about it a few years ago, but I'm not sure if...
That project is no longer prioritized.
Okay.
You done?
One more thing. Can you tell us the grants that you're now looking to get?
Looking to get, not that we have.
Yeah, that you have. Well, tell me what you have to.
Okay. We have Schiller Park. That's just, we're finishing that one up. That's the field. Cecil Center, which I mentioned. Right now, we're installing, we had HVAC installed. We have IT coming in, computers, and kitchen. Magnorelli McChesney, that pre-construction meeting is tomorrow. What is these? Gym renovations. Grant Field, that's a complete overhaul this year. We are on a stall right now for fencing and lighting equipment at Burnett Park. We're just getting the final numbers, but that is one that I'm speaking of where we're at a stall because we don't necessarily have enough money.
Where's that going to go? In the back?
It's for a softball field.
The main one in back, yeah.
That's one of those where they gave it to us for fencing improvements, but we can't address fencing improvements without addressing the lighting improvements, so that's, we have to work around that obstacle. We're trying to address community pools. One of the things that Bob Andrews right now is trying to reallocate is Burnett Park is in major need of repair. We'll make it through the summer, maybe another summer, but it's not going to make it much longer without major renovations. So we have one currently for 5 city parks, but we're trying to see if he can talk to Senator Valesky to see if some of those projects can be put off a year so that we can address the major ones first.
And so that the funding that just before the end of the year, and I get some folks, but the money for Burnett Park pool was like $100 grand, if I'm not mistaken. Is that just
the pool?
Yeah,
it's around the 500 mark.
So that was just a drop in the bucket. Okay.
To do the needed repairs is about 500.
Yeah, it was just like $100 grand we moved over, and so I wasn't sure what the scope of work you guys were looking at is.
Strategically as well, it's my understanding there's never been a strategic assessment of all of our pools. So one plan as we go forward is to look at dollars for consultant possibly. I'll ask Bob to go back and see if any of our delegation will allow us to use funds for that purpose so we can see where our pools are structurally and get an assessment of what we need to do with each one of them.
One of the ththings that I see under the special projects is the Hiawatha Lake Wall. I don't want to put the cart before the horse on this one, but you know, I know it needs extensive work, and there's possibly a handful of different funding sources that we may use. I know it might be a bigger number, but I know this is something that's sort of been dragging on for a while, and my concern is that if it isn't fully addressed, that it's similar to the Burnett pool. It's gonna, you know, be
it is a priority. Bob is on that, nailing that funding sources together so we can get to that project and not. From my understanding, the process initially was to piecemeal its construction, which is not a good way to go.
I
We need to
agree,
do it all at one time. So he is diligently working on trying to, so we can do it all together.
Yeah, that would, I guess, be my concern, is that if we go about, initially, in years past when it first came up, the discussion was, well, we'll fix this piece, and then maybe the year or two later we'll go back and we'll fix another.
Right.
And if we do that, it just seems like we're going to be spending every year asking somebody from the state to come back with money for us. That we'd probably be better suited just addressing the issue once and for all without, knock on wood, anything unforeseen coming up
He
after
believes
that.
that he is about there. He's about $150,000 short. That he does not believe that he's not going to be able to just reallocate.
Fine, okay.
Reallocate funding so we can. But the project probably we won't get to till next season.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
If we can get that money, like you said, secured, we are on track for next year, construction in 19.
For the full project.
Okay.
We do have, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Please.
No. Please.
we do have 500,000 from a CFA grant that we wrote last year.
Yes.
So that was phase one, and I know that it was piecemeal, we didn't, but there were also parameters on how much we could ask for. So we asked the contractor, the engineer that came in, to do it in 2 phases, so that we would be able to do, one after the other. But we do currently have 500,000 in a grant that's available, so.
While you're up there, I'm forgetting the name of what's the $500 million thing that we got from this?
Chad and I are sitting here.
Trying to think of the name of that grant funding.
That we got here,
Well, no, the
The
whole
URI?
region.
URI.
yeah, right.
So of the URI, is there any more opportunities in that, or is it all sort of, was it predicated because it was done ahead of?
You hear different things. I believe there is more opportunity, and I know that Stephanie Pasquale and Nora went to Buffalo on Monday, and they took a look at some of the money that they've used in their projects, and they're going to come back here, and we're going to make our best case in June with the consolidated funding applications and working with the REDC.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with the URI, from my understanding and working in that process and going and presenting, most of that money has been designated for economic development projects. It doesn't mean that we can't make a request for any additional dollars.
They did allocate some money for the park wall specifically from that project, though.
For Hiawatha.
For Hiawatha.
Strathmore. Hiawatha.
And that was the 500,000 through you? That was that same project? That was part of the URI?
That was the CFA, that was the regular CFA
Right.
from New York State Parks.
And they are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I spoke with Bob Andrews yesterday about Upper Onondaga Park, and he told me that there was almost all of the funding in place for the wall, and that there's funding in place, member money, I believe, for the playground as well, upper playground and the lower playground.
The lower is the only one I'm aware of.
Oh, not the.
I think that they were going to try and use some of the one that was going to do upper too.
Because we had $250,000 that the previous administration had moved to spend on the park wall that we had reallocated for roads and park road improvements, because we weren't going to need it anymore because we had received this grant. So that was in December, December last year.
250.
Well,
It was $250,000 because there was sort of
That's
sure,
what they set aside for the wall, but then they got the money for the wall, so then they were gonna use that.
so then we were asked to move the money
Any of
that
the
they
county
didn't
money,
need.
That was city money.
No, a while back when when the county had put some money into the abstract for Upper Onondaga Park, and it had been deemed a little bit inappropriate to move it that way. At that time, Stephanie Miner had moved $250,000 into parks to use for repairs, but then shortly after that, we received the $500,000 grant. And so at that time, Parks had decided that they weren't going to need this additional money that the city had set aside for it, so the council was asked to move it into road repairs, park roads,
Which I'm sure it was.
which was needed as well. So, and we did move it at that time because we were under the understanding that the park wall repairs that were funded.
Okay.
Okay, let me ask a couple questions here, please. You answered my one question on Lower Onondaga. I am ecstatic about that. I'm looking at page 200, the temporary services part-time. I'm just curious to know how many and what do they do? Yeah, and why it dropped as much as it did. No, it didn't.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and why the numbers dropped.
This position is utilized with our forestry department, so they come in and we usually get some sort of ESF student that helps with the managing of our tree canopy. So those temporary services are for a student, 1 or 2, for the year to come in and help us with that.
Okay. And then I'm want to go down a little bit, professional services, and I'm looking at it's 64, then it goes all the way to 75, and I'm curious to know what does that consist of?
That is somebody who's on SURA.
You gotta look at this budget.
Yeah.
Alrighty, now let's go down to 201, and let's take a look because I'm curious. They said we have 6 fountains that we maintain.
6 fountains. Oh. Are you wondering which fountains they are?
Yes.
Just, Glenn, do you know all of them? The fountains?
The fountains that we have that are in the worst condition are Columbus and Hanover Square. But we certainly need to do work on additional fountains beyond that, but those will be several hundreds of thousands of dollars each.
Are you just looking for the
No,
list?
I'm
You
just
want to know which
curious to
6
know. I
ones?
want to know. It says 6.
Where are the
6
6?
fountains?
Okay, so that's 2 of them. We also have a fountain at Clinton Square. That would be 3. We have a fountain at Foreman, Fayette Firefighters.
Onondaga?
Onondaga's not
Absolutely.
up, is it?
There's a fountain in the lake.
But Onondaga's fountain is not up. So what are we doing? Because that looked like a bed of rocks.
It's being turned on in 2 weeks.
Onondaga's fountain works as
So
in
that
the way that it's worked all the time that I've been working for the Parks Department.
It's just winterized right now.
Onondaga Road, that former fountain doesn't qualify into that, correct? Where you turn on to.
right.
Honestly, I don't have that information right now, but I can get back to you if you'd like about that.
Okay, what's the last one? I'm just curious.
I think
Well, and we have a new spray pad at the lower park. I would consider that a fountain.
Okay. So the one on the one you're talking about, Lower Onondaga, that
At,
spray pad.
at Onondaga Ave.
Okay, we could talk afterwards. Okay. 'Cause that-
The fountain, I consider a fountain something that has an electric surface, pumps, motors, perhaps a filtering system. And the fountain at South Ave and Lower Onondaga Park does not have any of that.
I know.
In reference to fountains, I'm sure there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Good. With the fountain that's in Clinton Square there, oftentimes you see people in the summertime running through it, sort of swimming in it, splashing around. Have we taken steps to somehow, I just worry about if something happens with it's some type of infection or something, contamination of some sort. Is there any way, is it
it's not filtered by any, no.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay, and I would assume that we would be liable as a city for some, because I'm sure we put on there and around it that you can't swim and that you shouldn't, but I've never seen it enforced.
I agree. I haven't seen, I think that's a police, I mean, we don't
right.
have the services to enforce.
A
So-
few more. Okay.
So, Counselor, what I would say to add to the pool assessment would be one concerning our fountains, which are filtered, which are not. What
Yeah,
should we be implementing when they are not filtered and people are running around in them?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but it's our job to be fiduciaries of the city.
No.
And every time I see families and kids running through that and swimming in it, that's immediately where my mind goes is,
was the day he called
what
me
happens if one of those kids gets hurt? What if somebody gets sick because the water's contaminated in some way? It's just where my mind goes when I, go by there.
But also, just as she grouped it with the pools as well, our fountains are in disrepair. Hanover Square specifically, I mean, they're going to need to be addressed, and those will be up in the same price range as probably the pools as well.
Okay.
All righty.
Do you have anything else to add? I know you would.
Well, I was just going to say another word or two about fountains. In the case of fountains, our fountains typically do not have a way of sanitizing. So they do not have a chlorine system. They do not have an ultraviolet light system. In the case where we have added a new fountain, for example, at the lower park, what we do is instead of recirculating water, we allow the water to go to drain. So there's no recirculation of germs. It goes to ground. In the case where we had a system where we had a spray pad where the water recirculated, we simply discontinued the use of that fountain. So that fountain is at Westmoreland Park. So there was a spray pad there, it recirculated, it had no filtration system, it had no UV system. We discontinued use of the fountain.
So because the new fountains are, instead of recirculating the water, letting it dissipate through natural ways, is there a possibility of applying for rain?
Save the rain.
Save the rain funds for the infrastructure maybe surrounding these areas?
In the case where I have put in spray pads where we salvage water and defer it from going into the sewer system, I have used systems that go to ground. They do not have any sort of recirculation. They have no filtration or sanitation. The wastewater simply goes to ground. But they have paid for the capital improvement of upgrading our fountains in those 2 or 3 cases. One being Skiddy Park, another being Comfort Tyler Park.
Can I? Okay, I'm looking on page 204, and it says the car allowance. And I'm just trying to understand what that means with all the vehicles that we have, that we're paying a car allowance for.
That would be recreation.
This is underground, so, these would be, folks that use their own cars, during the time because there's not another vehicle for them to use.
Parks? But not
For their
like-
work.
Just moving themselves, not.
So that'd be like if we send them to like a conference or something, or from park to park in their own car. I assume they're getting the state rate of mileage, and that's.
It would be a reimbursable mileage rate,
Okay.
approved rate.
Okay. And then I'm gonna go with 2 more. I wanna know what this out of title pay means, because it's going from 0 to 6,000. What's that for?
So out of title pay generally means that somebody is working in any given title and they are required to do the next title up or a couple titles up. So I might be a laborer or a recreation aide, and for the week I needed to be a crew leader or a rec leader, then you'd get the pay difference for that.
Okay, and how often does that happen before they're made a crew leader? If they're
Typically, it's like a 1 week at a time because somebody's on vacation. So it's basically filling in to cover those gaps.
okay. Then my last question for you is 17. The actual for Clinton Square was almost $65,000. It zeroed out after that. So does that mean that we don't need any more maintenance on the?
No, that we just don't budget for that line. It's all based on the festival monies that we bring in.
Okay.
Did we cut any of our recreation programs this year or scale back any of those programs?
We did have to scale back some. We tried to affect that the least of all the cuts that we had to make, but we did technically.
Do you know which ones offhand?
We didn't necessarily do it specifically by program. They have a dollar amount now, a lesser dollar amount to work with, and they will look at their numbers and see which ones are either the least attended, or they'll factor that in to see which one would not be offered this year.
So that you think they're going to cut or just sort of invest less in certain programs?
In the case, I think of sometimes with the fitness instructors, they might just not schedule them as often as possible so that we can still offer it, but some camps or programs may just be cut because they just don't have it in their funds to offer all of them.
And how do they, excuse me, I apologize. How do we go about informing the public? Because obviously people year in and year out, they show up, they expect certain things at the parks, you know, I mean.
All of our programs, there's anything that's for pay is scheduled in advance and advertised in advance. So if people, and I think there's the case of a summer camp that we already had decided not to offer it this year. Is that correct, Chris? So we had already decided not to offer it this year, so that was one of them that was conveniently being able to be pulled out. So we just didn't advertise it this year, but that was already in our plan. Did that make sense?
Oh, no, it does. Real quick, funded, unfunded positions. I mean, there's a few different departments, but overall, what are we looking at?
Unfunded 3 recreation leader positions. Or you're asking how many we removed, or
Well,
just?
so you have 3 unfunded positions that you kept on the books?
Yes.
Okay. And that because you hope someday that we'll have the funds to, we need those 3. Okay.
No.
Do you plan on filling, do you have funded positions that are vacant?
We do.
How many?
3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
And we're working to fill, I mean, we're always looking to
We're
fill
gonna
them.
plan on filling all 6, or do we just plan on filling 3 or 4 and see where we go? or-
Ideally, we would fill all 6, but it
Okay.
just,
Good. No, some people like unfunded positions in their department.
Not this one. We need everybody.
I was also looking at some of the events. It says the Symphoria programs zeroed out. That's not Pops in the Park, is it? We're still doing Pops in the Park, right? Pops in the Park's good? Good, okay. Thank you. Okay, the other thing, back to the playgrounds and kind of on what Joe was saying about concerning ourselves with the liability. Some of our playgrounds need some fixing, and I thought we were going to be doing Upper Onondaga Park, but we're doing Lower, and I know that I'm wondering where in the budget have we set aside for repairs to current equipment, and if we can't be replacing equipment that needs to be replaced, are we budgeted to repair for it, and how often are we going to be checking into?
Last year, I believe it was, we actually have people who are certified in our department to go around and inspect our playgrounds, so we should be, as we move through those, we should be getting a better picture of how our playgrounds stand. There is money in our grounds operation to do repairs and maintenance on our playgrounds as well as the rest of the parks. And with our capital plan, if there's things that are in major need of repair, that's where the funds will end up going.
And right now would probably be a great time to send those people out to do some inspecting because the kids aren't at the playgrounds yet, but but the adults can be. So we don't have 6 feet of snow out there right now, so that would be great. Because I know, for instance, I think you know, Julie, the Upper Onondaga Park has some pretty major safety hazards in the playground right now that needs to be kind of addressed before we get in trouble. So.
we are tracking down the replacement piece. It's actually just been a little bit difficult. Because my understanding is actually that was a neighborhood playground, so we haven't been able to track down.
That neighborhood-funded playground was built, you know, probably, I don't know, when, Glenn? 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Anyways,
that
that has created just a little bit of an obstacle for us to get the replacement piece back as quickly as we'd like, but immediately Glenn went and has been tracking that down.
Yeah, I know that's one of our most popular pools, and you know, the number of kids who go there to the pools, and so the number of kids on that playground is also substantial.
I have a meeting next week for a community-driven playground for that, so.
Great.
So parks, pavement, sidewalks, that stuff. Are we doing any of that work in-house this year?
So
I know we
has-
talked about all this. a
Yep,
little
and what
bit.
has to happen immediately is a conversation, once we get through this process with DPW, to begin to look at what their schedule is for the year and to begin to try to routinely fit in our parks paving needs within their schedule. We don't want to source it out. It's cost inefficient for us to do that.
Does it seem feasible, you know, it may not be for this year, but to see how it goes and see if we can use our own pavement? Or do you think that that process will take a little bit of time and it would put us behind the 8 ball on doing the stuff in our parks this year?
I think we can prioritize this year. We just have to work with the DPW commissioner, who's hearing this for the first time right now, which parks are the priority and how we can fit them into their seasonal schedule.
And we have, I mean, we're regularly on top of this. We meet with our planning department often, when it actually came up today, but we do have a prioritized list. We have 5 right now that we want it, that if we had to contract out, are ready to go, but we have a priority list of which ones need the most
Share
attention.
that with us? Not now,
you
but
can
I'm
get it
just
to
saying,
them.
can you
Yes.
share it? Yeah.
And the hope would be within that 5 to speak to DPW commissioner about which of those he can fit in.
Works best,
Even
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, the comment from the last administration's DPW commissioner, as I recall, was that you had to get those to them early so that they could fit it in with their schedule so that they could get it. So there was, I know that Commissioner Sims had asked for some parks to be taken care of last year.
I'll try to be
and
very
and they weren't getting
persuasive.
taken care of, yeah.
I'll try to be very
You
persuasive.
know, I think it wouldn't be bad if we had maybe a spot that's not, you know, heavily traveled, but some place that needs Tarvia, because these guys constantly have a little left over. And if we have a spot in the city that they don't have to drive wherever, they can dump a yard or two of Tarvia on even a service road or something, just so it's not going to waste, or we're not, you know, using it some, you know,
They can,
driving somewhere to give it away, you know.
Syracuse.
Yeah.
Wait. All right, so I have 2 questions. First one is in the professional services part, so 362. So the 2 lines on there, I just want clarification on our fringe and miscellaneous.
Okay, 'cause
Sorry, yeah.
362. Yeah. So on 362, there's 30,000 for fringe.
That is a Sura employee.
Okay. And so then there's another 49,000 on 363.
Those are 2 other Sura employees that are just broken out by which bureau or department they work for.
So, but looking at like the grounds maintenance, is that the SIR employee, the assistant superintendent?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the
That's his-
benefits for that
that's-
one
that's-
employee.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
And Counselor, just let me, Ken, is there any way you can get us a breakdown of all of your SIR employees in parks?
Who they are or what they're paid.
I just want to know how many.
Yeah, we can get that to you.
I think we
I have
have
4.
that in the Sura.
We have,
The SURA payroll list
yeah.
that I gave, it's by department, so you already have that.
it's 4 total for us.
4 for you guys. What positions are they in?
We have 2 in recreation, 1 in grounds, and 1 in the admin.
Okay. And then on 361 miscellaneous for 5,000.
Let me double check.
Thank you.
I wrote that down. I believe that's in for any advertising that we need to do for any of our events that we're holding. That would include camps and anything else like that.
Okay. And then my other question is on the revenue side, separate from permit fees, which we have talked about. Do you see anything coming up in the future, like creative ideas in terms of like additional concessions or additional use of parks for, you know, groups that would be renting it out, or just other opportunities for revenue generation within the parks, just because they're some of the best assets in the city, and if there's areas where you think they're underutilized that we could get money for our budget from?
We haven't had that specific discussion. I mean, I know that there's groups who would like to see increased use and rentals of our buildings. The only problem is that in the case of the fire barn, then you're introducing wear and tear into a historical building, so that's something that definitely has to be taken, you're going to take revenue, but you're going to also have to spend money to repair any damages, because damages always come, wear and tear, anything like that. So we haven't had that specific discussion. We can. The only discussion we had 2 months ago was regarding just admission fees, swim lessons. That's where we started, but I imagine that we're going to be addressing much broader picture this year.
The other thing that has to be addressed in where we stand as administration are groups who lease our space, who like to charge admission. So you're charging admission on a public facility. Should part of that benefit come back to the city?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I think it's obviously not a black and white answer because there's a lot of legal stuff there. But, you look at like Thorndon Park, the amphitheater there, which is, a lot of cities don't have anything like that at all. It's such a great asset, and it seems like it's underutilized, and what could we be doing to...
And always for parks, fees for functions is difficult because it's a park and you can enter and leave in any direction, particularly Thornton, 3-4 different exit and entrances to it. But use of the asset, and you want to charge for it, is something we have to really nail down, and what benefits should come back to the city as well.
Yeah, and the answer could be a third party where, they have use of it over a certain amount of times, and then they do the individual renting it out from there, and the city gets like a fixed amount or something like that. So,
yeah, assuming they do everything. Councilor Rudd asked me a question that I should know the answer to. Where does the greenhouse fall under in facilities? Doesn't?
The greenhouse is ours.
Yeah, but
Where in the budget is it?
Yeah. Is it just under?
It's in the grounds. It's not broken out specifically.
But is it under open, natural resources or natural areas? What do they call it?
Will we be using the greenhouse to beautify our parks this year?
Are we using it?
Will we be? I know we didn't use it last year. It just seems strange not to use it. I don't know. Are we going to be using it
I don't
to
know.
grow flowers to plant in our parks?
Go ahead.
The greenhouse is not listed as an individual facility. It is simply a building in Onondaga Park. Onondaga Park is a community park, so that's the sort of general listing. So,
To answer your question, I don't know what happened last year, but my understanding is that's why we have staff there. So I will, not knowing what happened in the past, I will make sure that that is what we're doing this year.
the greenhouse is used. If you went there right now, you would see just scads and scads of color, little plants that are like that big.
Last year we didn't grow the sometimes the neighborhood groups are able to go to the greenhouse to get flowers and stuff to plant in the planters around the parks and in spaces around the city, and we weren't able to access. The groups weren't able to access any annuals last year.
I'm not sure about the distribution. I just kind of see the sea of color.
Yeah,
and
I went down there last year.
And so we put out a new
plants
roof.
in there.
We shored up the building. We put in a new HVAC system. We buttoned it up, and that allowed us to increase our capacity to grow plants from seed. And that is in fact happening.
I think Joe Kelly would be the guy to explain distribution best, just because I had a few conversations about signs. I had a few conversations about sign locations where neighbors were interested, and he's who ended up saying, yeah, I can get some flowers there. I don't know if it was...
Okay.
Yeah.
So while access for residents is absolutely something we want to do, we definitely want to prioritize the growth for the staff we have to make sure that we're plantings around. But we'll check and make sure that process is working.
Yeah, it's just been in the past as a community group person, we were always able to
Okay.
get for the medians and the planters and the signs that say welcome to the neighborhoods and stuff. People could get city annuals.
Yeah, I remember, so at Southwest, being able to put flowers in the beds, and we got them right from the greenhouse. So I don't know, we'll check into that and see what was going on.
Regarding the greenhouse, I understand that the people who've been there traditionally are retiring or have retired or are retiring or something. Is there training in place for when people are replaced? I think I took a tour last year, and it seemed like maybe, and I'm not sure about the status of the building, which leads me to ask about needs assessment in general. Like the school district, I mean, they get money from the state to do a needs assessment, but do we have any kind of needs assessment? For instance, I know the heavy snow knocked down the pavilion in Elmwood Park, and my feeling is that there's a substantial need, even though there has been a new roof and new HVAC and the repairs you were talking about on the greenhouse, but it still seems like it may need more. I'm not sure, but how can needs assessment at a high level, and then like maybe the two particular.
The guy that was there is gone, so I don't know about him transitioning out. Just so you know.
We have a young person that's been working with the two seniors there, and Paul has been working there for the better part of 10 years. So I think that he's really developing a working knowledge of the greenhouse and all of its operations, and he's got some good experience under his belt. So if and when those guys retire in 6 months, 3 days, or a year, there's a person there that really knows the operations of the greenhouse because he's been working there for a decade. Now, as far as putting money into the greenhouse, what we have done is we have prioritized making the greenhouse functional for use. So again, we focus on the roof, the environmental controls, those kinds of things. I have a proposal in place where we can look at some needs that has not been funded, but that's something that we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Are
then
you, I'm sorry, are you saying the greenhouse needs more funding to be functional?
Enhancements, Pop,
Okay.
enhancements.
Okay.
Mhm. He did the work to make it functional.
So it is ready to
Yeah,
go?
yeah. It's enhancements. It's like bare bones. Like just white paint on the wall. Right.
and then
For the $20,000 that we're putting into the greenhouse, that makes it so that we can maintain an even temperature. There's no holes in the roof. However, the greenhouse needs to be renovated. It will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to renovate the greenhouse. So this $20,000 is to just kind of stabilize it so that we can get to the point of deciding what we want to do with the greenhouse.
So there's definitely an assessment needed for a capital project for the greenhouse.
So we just bought 2 or 3 years so we can figure out what is it that we're going to do with the greenhouse.
What I'm learning very quickly is that we have an aging infrastructure, not only under the ground, but over the ground in our parks,
Yes.
which are wonderful assets, and we need to see where we are in every single one of them. Ground, pool, all of it.
one more, because I would hate to have Steve Harris come here and not be able to talk at all. 'Cause I know it was a rough winter. And maybe I'm biased because I live next to Elmwood and the true number of trees that tipped over was so much, but was it much rougher? And like how extensive is the damage, and how will you actually get them out of the park so that they're clear? And that kind of.
So you were asking about the impact of the storms this winter on our operations?
Yeah, is it worse than normal?
Well, the March 2nd storm was a big storm. It was a perfect storm in that the snow that happened in the first 30 minutes determined what the outcome was to us, because first was a little bit of ice, and ice-like snow that collected on the trees, and all the regular snow collected on that. And in a little over 48-hour period, we had 150 calls. We had our emergency contractor running 2 crews. We ran a crew. We worked 4 in the morning Friday, March 2nd, until I worked till 11 at night that night. And then all those crews worked all day on Saturday and all day on Sunday. Elmwood, we did spend all day there last week cleaning up some stuff. There's more to do. Our biggest constraint right now is that the log loader that we use, which is DPW's log loader, which Pete O'Connor so kindly let us use, has been down for maintenance since that March 2nd storm. And so there's going to be there's an item in our capital budgets for this year, which is a new log loader that would be ours at Parks, and that's a $195,000 item. That is, a functioning forestry crew needs a lot of expensive equipment, and you should think about our forestry costs in the context of DPW, which is where we were 20 years ago. 95% of our time is more than that, is spent in the streets, pruning trees, working for all other departments. Police and fire call us, water, DPW. But that log loader increases our productivity by more than 3 times. So you take that away, and it impacts us because then we can't remove the big trees. So we have contractors doing that for us too, but we try and remove what we can, and we're definitely the lowest unit cost. All our contracts went up for renewal this year, and everything went up.
I was just going to ask while you're up there, the status of our canopy and the emerald ash and all that.
Ash borer has been a non-issue because we were proactive. We had 2,000 trees. We removed half. We treated half. We've treated the trees we've treated twice. We lose about 0.5% a year, mostly to sidewalks, when sidewalks get repaired. We are going through a master planning process right now, and so I do want to invite you to our May 2nd meeting. It's a stakeholder meeting, and that's where that's where we're starting to formulate our outreach plan. And I'm telling you that because I know sidewalks is one of the big issues, which is an issue that's greater than just forestry department. That's a city issue. And I think I've sent you an invite to all that, but I'm just getting that plug here because I got a microphone in front of me.
How's the tree planting going with, is it Earth Corps?
Onondaga Earth Corps. They are playing with Onondaga County Save the Rain. This is the last year for that. But we do have capital and bonded dollars for this year that we are going to allocate some. We're going to pay them to plant trees using the county contract. And we have a stewardship line item. We prune trees in 2 ways now. We prune big trees using contractors, and we prune small trees using workforce development, which is the Onondaga Earth Corps. And we got a large grant working with the county, so they'll be pruning 2,400 trees for us this year. Okay. Employing about 6 people.
Okay, well, we're sitting here whispering. Let me ask a question.
I just didn't see the money for your tree loader in here, unless, is it under?
It's in the capital.
Oh.
Bonded.
Gotcha, okay, different budget.
Yep. Is that it for me?
So what are you going to use to get the one out of Burnett Park?
I didn't see that. Is that right by the road?
It wasn't there yesterday. It is there today.
It's back.
It's on the second fairway.
Is it away from the road?
Away from the road.
Yeah. Right now, everybody's seen a lot of stuff. Besides that March 2nd storm, then we had a really big windstorm, and that kept us busy too. And people are all the time are saying to me, "We got all this stuff down. When are you going to get it?" Now's a terrible time for us to go in the parks. We're going to leave 2-foot ruts in the ground. So we're not driving on anything if we don't have to right now. If we can reach something with the winch from a chipper, then we pull that cable out and hook it and pull it in. That causes its own damage. It's not as bad. I am willing to bet that Bob Sickles, our inspector, already knows about that tree, and we're adding it to the pile, and we're going to wait till it makes sense to get out there. And so probably, who's the crew leader at Burnett Park? Bob Murphy. He's probably already called. He probably knew about it. If he was in his living room when it fell, he probably knew about it and called us.
So who does Inner Harbor now for their trees
falling? You mean along the creek walk? Anywhere along the creek walk at Inner Harbor?
No, right on that outer skirt of Kirkpatrick and
where the parking lot is?
Yes, because there's a bunch of trees down.
Are there? Sometimes the stuff closest to you don't notice. So I will go check that out and take care of that.
I don't know. I've seen like the Grimm out doing work and stuff? Are we contracting out with them?
They have both our trimming and removal contracts.
Okay, because I just saw them in my neighborhood
Yep.
earlier today.
Yep.
But to answer my question though, do we still take care of the inner harbor being that it's not parks anymore?
There is parkland, so the creek walk portion of Inner Harbor from the path to the water, that's us.
Okay.
And I think the parking lot, isn't that? What's that?
The amphitheater area and the parking lot, we still maintain.
Yeah, that's still
Okay,
us.
well, let me just tell you
Yeah.
about the parking lot is sinking. Okay, so our car is gonna go down in there.
And then from the path to the water and in the water, hanging over the water, is nobody's?
Between the path and the water, we manage that. We manage all along the creek, yeah. If there's tree issues,
Is it ours to is our land?
that's my understanding. Am I wrong? I know the Canal Corporation manages the water itself, but
I thought they had it with that hotel,
we mow that.
the hotel, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's parks, parks.
And Counselor, for the phase 2, we just met because our maintenance of what's going to be happening along the phase 2,
Yep.
we're taking control of it now. If we need to have
Parks,
another
DPW,
conversation-
very, et
exactly.
cetera.
We're going to be, we're going to be doing it.
Yeah.
I have one programmatic comment and then one more question. But for the Action Basketball League, I grew up like playing and coaching in that, and when I played in it, it was not high school specific, which was great because you got to play with other kids, like private school kids, some suburban kids would play, but you would not play with your high school team, and then kids who didn't play on high school teams played,
Right.
and it was bigger. And now I understand that I think it's all high school oriented. I mean, I do think as a Parks and Rec, it's like an opportunity to not have it be high school specific, which makes it just like kind of exclusive and a repetition of the winter season. So that's just you can respond if you like, but
yeah, and we still right for the evening portion, the varsity portion. It's team based, but we do have an open division during the day for 2 different age groups as well. But what
are those age groups during the day?
13 to 15, and just below that, 10 to 12. Yeah.
How are we going to win state championships if the kids aren't playing together all year round?
Do we have as high a participation as we did, say, back in Tim Rudd's years ago?
Yeah.
Many years ago.
About 3.
Yeah, we have.
Well, I know a lot of kids who didn't always thrive in school would be entertained and busy during those rec leagues because they weren't high school specific, and it does seem, and not to mention that the high schools, like we live in a segregated community with segregated schools for the most part, so it's an opportunity for us to actually cross some of those barriers, and instead we kind of replicate them.
By maintaining the teams.
Yeah.
We can explore more options for open
Not
basketball.
to be too social engineering, you know, but.
Yeah, I think
And then the
question-
last question, which will be, I'm sure popular, unpopular. Are there any opportunities for shared services within parks with other municipalities, or even to do it more regionally? Are there regional parks that we could work where we should be getting resources from the county or whoever to help maintain them?
We've began.
So county parks offers no programming, so you can't really share that maintenance of parks. I'm sure that can be explored. I know that there's been some questions of our department to see where there's opportunities to make that happen. No determinations have been made. So far, the questions they've asked of us have not really been beneficial. They examined it from both sides.
What about the questions, you know, that nobody wants to have to talk about, but the ideas of, you know, consolidating, you know, both of them, and you know, we run services, you know, they take maybe just a couple parks that need, you know, some infrastructure help, you know, I mean, is there?
I don't think that talk is taking place within our department. I mean, that's a talk that happens outside of our department, and then they come to us.
So out of the mayor's office, that conversation, Bob Andrews has led the discussion on that. Burnett was an example because it's right next to the zoo. So why not extend that service beyond the zoo? And so I have to, and I should have asked before I came down here, check in with Bob to see where we are in those conversations. So strategically, so you mentioned the 4 strategically large parks. I mean, Burnett was the obvious first one because it's right off the zoo. So where it just makes sense. Let's see how that would work, and the cost benefit.
I know
for
before
both.
we had tried to have some of those conversations. It didn't go very far, you know, but I think we're all looking.
We're prepared to have that discussion where it makes sense, absolutely.
So to touch on that, we did have that conversation. We went on site. We met on site with the county staff because we contract out for our largest parks, so therefore it wouldn't really affect our staff. We wouldn't have to consider that angle. Yeah. But they came to us with what it would cost them to mow it, and there was not a benefit to the city.
That's where the conversation continues.
Yeah, so we've been examining it, and we just haven't. The conversation hasn't gotten to a point yet where it seems we've hit that spot where it works for both.
Okay. Well, I think that's naturally everybody's looking at the progression of municipalities, and parks is one that you can share services without really, getting into the weeds with all the other stuff. And so I think it would be a good leader if we do, start to continue down that path.
We agree.
Great.
Yeah, it just has to be a cost benefit to the city.
Can't be a loser. No, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Okay, well, thank
Can
you.
I just make a comment, Councilor?
I just have one. I'm going to have to pick, and I have to dig. And I'm digging in this because, okay, my little narrative, we're a city working together.
Yes.
We're a city with the mayor and the council and the county and everybody working together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to understand, there's a marketing assistant one in the Parks Department.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we using our marketing department in City Hall to market?
So that is the marketing person in City Hall. Has traditionally been that line. Again, that list is a list that, as I spoke to in the last meeting, I need to vet.
Okay.
So that person's technically in our parks, but it does.
Does the marketing, does the design work for parks? That person is in the Parks Department, but working out of City Hall.
Doing everything. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And providing that work across the board. So again,
You've been here 3 months. You don't have all this stuff fixed?
yeah, I'm working on it. I'm doing enough hours to have it fixed. But if I may just say something in closing, I want to take a moment. Steve Harris was up here, and he's an example of the many individuals working for parks who are the go-to people in our region for experts in various areas in the central New York. I'm not just talking about the city of Syracuse. And the people here who are experts in that area are the pride of the city. They know their jobs. They're effective at what they do. They care about our parks. They care about our parks usage, and have continued to do yeoman's work and continue to provide a service. Their summer started last month, and they're continue to track through and get things done and make sure that our kids and our seniors and our parks are ready for the use of the community. Going forward, there's no way I can avoid this conversation, and why should we? We are strategically looking at all facets of the Parks Department, from finances to usage to other revenue-generating opportunities, as every other department is doing the same thing. So I'm proud of our Parks Department. I'm proud of the people that work for it. We're going to continue to make one of our greatest assets in our city continue to be one of our greatest assets. Thank you.
Thank you. Call meeting to close. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.